Good day, Mr. and Mrs. America, from border to border, coast to coast, and to all the ships at sea. This is your correspondent, Jim Tate, and welcome to the Tate Chronicles. Joining me as I cut through the fog that exists at the leading edge of healthcare technology. Come with me and explore emerging technologies that hold the potential to bring beneficial disruption to healthcare. My guest today is Mark Stevens. Mark is the managing partner at EnableHealth, and EnableHealth is very involved in disruptive health technologies and business process solutions. Mark, welcome to the Tate Chronicles.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate you giving us a few minutes to kind of discuss what you've seen and hear your comments on them. First, tell us a little bit about your background and what is the goal of EnableHealth.
Sure, thanks. Well, as you know, I've been in healthcare now. I hate to say it, but I look at my 6-year-old, and I know it's been a long time.
Sure.
Probably about 20 years. I started out in the industry actually in executive search. And my last role in health IT executive search, I helped create the health IT practice at Tyler & Company, which is a retained firm out of Atlanta. I've been here in the Philadelphia region for about 15 years, and I've been very involved with public policy, which has really served me well in healthcare, being such a regulated industry. And at the time when I left Tyler & Company, I had been recruited due to some public policy I had promoted through letters to the editor around electronic medical record adoption. Mm-hmm. And it caught the eye of the chair of a new organization in Philadelphia called the Pennsylvania eHealth Initiative that was founded after a model of the national eHigh. And that was founded in response to the stimulus package and the High-Tech Act way back, what was that, 2008 or even earlier, just to do the same, promote electronic medical record technology and health information exchange. So I was recruited to run the Pennsylvania eHealth Initiative, and I was its first executive director, served in that role for over 4 years. It's a statewide group, grassroots, but it had all the leading stakeholders in healthcare in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It was really an exciting time. There was no blueprint. We made it up as we went, but it was with the core principles that patients come first, including their control of their data. And that's, that mission was unwavering, and it's more relevant now than it's ever been. I left that role, actually, Jim. I was recruited. I mentioned my background in public policy. I was recruited to run for the State House, and I won the Democratic nomination and ran until I ruptured 2 discs in the course of campaigning, and I dropped out of the race. I was leading the polls, but founded a consulting firm which has become what today is known as EnableHealth.
Well, and so, Mark, I had the pleasure of speaking with you in person at the recent HIMSS conference, and one of the things that struck me is you talked to a lot of people involved in technology and healthcare, and you travel very widely. And so tell me about some of the different disruptive technologies. I'm not talking about just evolutionary technologies, but some things that really have the potential to just bring disruption.
Sure. Well, of course, electronic medical records has been a foundation for a lot of work that we do. I love data analytics because that's really what unlocks the true value of all data we're capturing in the EMRs. But you've got complications like interoperability when we're trying to electronically share that data. I think you and I talked also at HIMSS a little bit about telehealth. There's a challenge of our own making, really, because telehealth really rests from a regulatory and a legal standpoint on state law and policy. And so it's very difficult to pull together telehealth policy when it's such a patchwork in different states across the country. But, what EnableHealth does now is not only do we look at disruptive technology, but we look at it globally. And, there you see really how telehealth is exploded in areas that don't have legacy systems like India and Africa and China, and even Canada to our north, which doesn't have the problems that we've got our own making with the distributed state law regulations and barriers. But what we're most excited about, and what's funny, it wasn't by design. It was really by default, but we're blessed with a fantastic group of leaders. We've got advisors from, fabulous folks like Charles Unger, who are just, he's the senior advisor and was executive director of the AMA's Innovation Center. A lot of folks might not know the AMA has an innovation center. It's called Health 2047 out in the Bay Area. And Charles, previously to that, was a SVP of Health IT or IT at Stanford Health, and was the first CIO of Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi. We also have Tam St. Clair, who's head of our advisory board for our Blockchain Center of Excellence, and Tam was the former Chief Innovation Officer at CRX Health. Both those folks have great experience in blockchain, and they've kind of brought us in that direction. Again, it wasn't by design, but it's incredible the opportunities there. And what I'm most excited about, and I'll draw a political, if you will, or social parallel, but this recent march of students on Washington, I'm
Sure.
really inspired by the young generation in looking at not only disruptive technologies, but disruptive business process, and even blowing up whole institutions and frameworks if they don't feel that they've served us well. So technology, just like EMRs, it wasn't about the EMR, it was about our ability to leverage EMR to foster better care and outcomes. So with something like blockchain, it's really cool to see. It's very nascent here in the States. It's actually much more advanced in both in terms of understanding and application and interest in making it widespread and applicable in places like Estonia and Southeast Asia, and I would say certainly Dubai as well. So we're excited to focus on, you and I can talk a little bit more about blockchain, but that's really caught our eye.
Absolutely, still a lot of people's eye, and that's the hot word right now. In prior years at HIMSS, we'd hear about meaningful use or macro MIPS, or on the regulatory side, and we'd hear about population health management and things like that. But this year at HIMSS, you didn't have to scratch the surface too much. Everybody was either claiming, rightly or wrongly, that they were pursuing blockchain technology. So for our listeners, it might be good, I guess, if we just stick our toe in it and try and come up with a simple definition of what blockchain technology is. You want to give a shot at that, Mark?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because we've been responsible for putting together a number of panels on blockchain and healthcare around the globe. Most recently, we were a party to the GSMA World Mobile Congress in Barcelona a couple of weeks before HIMSS 18. And we're partners with the European Connected Health Alliance there, and they were given the task of putting on the digital health innovation piece of that conference. And I moderated 4 panels on startups, none of whom were blockchain, but there was a ton of buzz in Europe about that as well. And one of the challenges I've seen in all these panels, whether it's Barcelona, we've done at the Connected Health Conference in October with HIMSS, last October we've done it with HIMSS regionally, most recently at Penn State, is what is that baseline definition, particularly for us, for our purposes in healthcare. And I will say this: it's not as easy an answer as you think. And to that point, just before I go on the definition, we're also working with a really cool group, and I'd mentioned I'm really excited about the younger generation. But there's a student-run group in blockchain at Berkeley, which is probably the strongest of its kind in the world. And they were a driving force beyond the creation of a growing group, a blockchain consortium, education consortium. Right now, they number over 40 universities around the world, and these are the folks who are going to teach us about blockchain. They can't tell you a definition. The reason why they're putting together this consortium is to establish a baseline definition of blockchain, not just in healthcare, but pan-industry and globally, and then springboard from that to develop some baseline curriculum for executive education, undergraduate and graduate, both from a business and a technical standpoint. So the fact that we're not quite sure what that baseline definition is, don't fret, because the smartest brains on the planet are still sort of grappling with what that is.
Well,
basically, it's a distributed ledger technology,
yes.
That's about as basic a definition as you can provide.
I got you. So let me take one little whack at it,
sure.
or at least part of the definition. In a lot of transactions, whether they're financial or health records or property titles or whatever, two entities that are exchanging or involved in a transaction may not know each other. And so there has to be some trusted third party, whether it's a mortgage broker or a health information exchange or a credit card company or something like that. And so you have to have that middleman, which is the trusted entity. And that middleman, there's a lot of back office friction and having multiple middlemen. It's expensive. I give an example. If I have a family in India and I want to send some money from Chapel Hill, North Carolina to them, I have to go pay money to somebody. They're going to take a pretty good percentage, maybe as much as 10% of that money, and it has to go through numerous banks and currency exchanges to get to them. It could take 4 to 7 days because I need that trusted third party. One of the benefits of blockchain is that trust that's needed is codified. It's in the blockchain. And so all of a sudden, these middlemen are not needed. So to me, that's a part of a definition. And so we can discuss many different ways that it brings benefits to healthcare. And let's talk about some of the, there's some appropriate uses for blockchain in healthcare, and there's some inappropriate uses. So can you tell us about some of the kind of appropriate, beneficial uses that you've seen based on blockchain?
Yeah, well, absolutely, and I think you you were spot on in your definition. Thanks, and let me a couple ripped on a couple of things. One sentence definition in blockchain is I can quote it directly from the advisory board, which I know your listeners are familiar with, and I'll just read that real quick. Blockchain technology allows decentralized communities of people and organizations to establish a single shared record of events with confidence that no one can tamper with historical records once they've been verified. So that's key. Another key is, there's a lot of information that's captured there that doesn't change. It's repetitive, that we can put on the blockchain and with confidence that it's verifiable and it doesn't change. Something like you graduated from high school, or even more to the point, medical school. And you don't ungraduate from medical school, yet that's right. Something that doctors in credentialing, it's key, and they have to repeat that information over and over and over. Why not establish a trusted, verifiable, permanent record that will save, a lot of it will make it, the efficacy of it was around efficiency, and as you said, I think the key word in all of what we both just talked about was trust. It's what's interesting. I'll let you, I think you and I chatted a little bit about this, but your listeners should take a look at or Google Rachel Botsman, Botsman. She's widely available through her numerous TED Talks. She's done a tremendous amount of work with IBM and with Intel around innovation. She teaches at Oxford's Graduate School of Business, and she talks about the new trust paradigm. And it's in the news right now indirectly around Facebook. We have a different definition of how we consider managing our personal data and information, and it really comes to the core of trust. And if you look at a company like Alibaba, its success revolves around really truly understanding this new trust paradigm, what people require in order to enter into an agreement and enter into commerce. And really blockchain is a metaphor, technological metaphor to this changing paradigm of trust. And, like with any crisis, there's an opportunity. I think blockchain really provides an opportunity to capitalize on knowing and acting on this new trust paradigm. So, as far as use cases, with all that said, what's coming out? I think the most powerful use case I've seen in healthcare right now actually applies both to payers and providers, and that's around pre-authorization. So that's that. And when you think about blockchain or really any technology, don't think about technology. Don't let the tail wag the dog. What's a business process that needs to be blown up and re-engineered, or at least streamlined and made more efficient? And through that efficiency, can we save some dollars and hopefully get better outcomes for our patients? And something like pre-authorization is a perfect example of where blockchain can provide, a trusted, verifiable platform that greatly increases efficiency and ultimately could provide for better care through quicker interactions between providers and payers and allowing for care to proceed.
Another thing, we've been talking about what blockchain is, and let me mention one thing from my observation. It is not. Blockchain is not a good database. The blockchain cannot absorb or handle gigantic CT images or scans or things like that. What blockchain is really the best use for is a ledger or transactions or hash pointers that may point off the chain to an X-ray image or a scan or other types of information. And we not only have the public blockchain where anybody with the right kind of viewer can go view transactions in that public chain, but many companies are developing their own private blockchain. So we're getting this hybrid system of public and private blockchains with a lot of the heavy data maybe just being in a traditional Oracle database or some other kind of database, but the chain may point to those large data files. It doesn't make a good database. It makes a fantastic ledger or list. Now, you mentioned proven a provider has graduated from medical school. That whole issue of professional credentialing. Every time a practice hires a physician or a provider needs staff privileges at a hospital, somebody has to go back and reinvent the wheel. Nothing that has been published or researched before is accepted. So it takes weeks and weeks, and it's very expensive to do that professional credentialing again because nobody trusts it, what somebody else has said. But once it's verifiable, valid sources have documented it, somebody's professional credentials, and it's locked in the blockchain, people don't have to go back to square zero again or block zero and redo all that. So professional credentialing is an amazing use case. And another one to me is clinical research, because as that data is gathered on doing clinical trials, I'm sure there is since there are financial incentives involved, there may be a intentional or just unconscious tendency to want the to go a same way. But, as you get deeper into the trial. But if that data has been locked in the blockchain, nobody can go back and alter that. So that ability to not alter prior data in the chain or transaction chain, that's a real benefit.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I think what you said at the outset, too, is a great way to think about it. It's important to figure out what blockchain is not. And that you'll get to narrow it down a lot more quickly. And again, there's if you work with hospitals, their list of must-haves exceeds their ability to in terms of time and resources to get everything they must have, let alone what they'd like to have or sort of what is sort of whimsical. And so in that reality right now, and they all have shrinking margins, they've got to look at business processes first. They can't do blockchain for the sake of blockchain. So it is important to look at these emerging use cases and the proof of concepts and pilots that are underway, what works. I think to your point around credentialing and data, if you stretch a little further outside of health systems in healthcare, and you look at something like pharma, they are already embracing blockchain around supply chain, and that's a big use case.
Absolutely.
That's big, and medical marijuana I would include in that too. Blockchain is a perfect storm for that industry in a number of ways.
Well, you mentioned big pharma and supply chain. With the right technologies associated with blockchain, counterfeit drugs and medications can be kept out of the chain that ends up with the patient. So there's some real potential there. So we're talking about all these, but different use cases, and there's certainly some low-hanging fruit, which really is just a slam dunk. There's just no doubt. Professional credentials.
Well, I'll jump in and just, I don't know if folks realize this, but we had a huge new development in HIMSS this year, HIMSS 18. HIMSS 18 came hard on the heels of their signing a 10-year agreement partnership with the International Olympic Committee. And the International Olympic Committee reached out to HIMSS as the game shifted from Brazil in the summer to L.A., and they asked HIMSS, boy, could you help us figure out how we can better manage athletes and coaches the data, particularly with, you can imagine, doping and the various testing, plus the logistics of athletes from over 150 countries. They were having a bear of a time with security and interoperability, and blockchain came up as a possible solution on both fronts. So the International Olympic Committee has tremendous amount of visibility and sway, not only over the Olympics, but really all organized sports worldwide in every country that participates. So people are watching very closely, and HIMSS potentially has a huge role globally now through that partnership. And they specifically got involved with the interoperability showcase there. So look for in future HIMSS conferences, potentially Olympic athletes walking around with wearables. Really proud of HIMSS for playing that role, and for the IOC, very excited they reached out and felt HIMSS was a trusted partner, and excited to see where that relationship's going and is going to lead us.
I wasn't aware of that. Thanks for bringing that up, Mark. One thing that kind of fascinates me where we are in the emergence of blockchain is when I discuss it with folks who maybe don't know anything about it, there is a desire on their part to understand how it works. They want to know how it works. But certainly, you don't need to know how the internet works to use email. And so at some point, blockchain is just going to be back there somewhere making things work that have value. And so it is kind of funny that in the ramp up to deeper adoption of blockchain technology, people feel a need to understand it who don't really need to understand it. Kind of a funny place.
Yeah. How many of us know how our car works?
Absolutely.
But that doesn't keep us from driving.
Yeah. And just electronically exchanging money. Who knows how that works? Somebody does, but I just know it works, and that's all I care about.
Right.
So.
And Jim, if I could, just a corollary to that, talking about use cases, I won't name names, but there's a large payer and a health information exchange and a large healthcare system that are looking at doing a blockchain pilot around pre-authorization. And they said, the payer said, we'll do it under one circumstance. Well, they had a couple, but among those criteria to do it was that blockchain would not be mentioned. it would not be made public that they were considering blockchain as a solution.
Sure.
So people are a little, blockchain is the underlying technology for cryptocurrency.
Absolutely.
And they did not want, they wanted blockchain to be a seamless sort of white labeled solution. Blockchain wasn't driving it. It just so happened that blockchain was the technology of choice, but they did not want blockchain to be even part of the public pronouncement of this pilot. So that says a lot.
Well, it does say a lot. Something else I noticed at HIMSS, I went by the IBM booth, large, can't really call it a booth, exhibition. They had a lot of space at HIMSS, and I said I want to talk to somebody about what IBM's doing in regards to blockchain. Of course, they're doing a lot, and so they pointed to the one individual, and you could tell that every major company has hired somebody as their blockchain subject matter expert. I went by MDion, which is now Change Healthcare, and said, I want to talk to somebody about blockchain. And they pointed and said, go talk to that person. So everybody has been pretty much, they know it's coming. They've hired the subject matter experts to help them figure out appropriate use, inappropriate use, but at least to have internally some knowledge of the potential of this technology. It's very exciting place where we are, and it's changing so rapidly.
It is, and we're working with two SMEs right now in healthcare data management, and both of them are pivoting to become blockchain developers.
Absolutely.
There's so much demand, and
sure.
And I know one of them, one of their VPs is moving physically his whole family to Dubai, and he goes, there's a tremendous amount of money.
Yes, there is.
Dubai came out. Yeah, Dubai came out. I think it was in November with a nationwide blockchain strategy.
Yeah,
and they might have been inspired by Estonia.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of interest, a lot of money there in the Southeast Asian blockchain.
Singapore. Yeah.
Mark, and Singapore. Yeah.
I hate to cut you short, but we're almost out of time here, and I want to ask you this: if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do they do it?
Sure. Well, I would hop on our website first. It's goenablehealth.com. And you can reach me at mark@goenablehealth.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn, so I'd love to link in with folks and continue this conversation, I guess, offline.
Great. Well, to everybody who's listening today, thanks for joining me on this episode of the Tate Chronicles. I offer a special salute to my guest, Mark Stevens of EnableHealth. You can find more information on this show's program page at healthcarenowradio.com. Until we meet again, here's wishing you smooth sailing and safe harbors.